Known to the Romans as Mare Nostrum, the Mediterranean Sea is still a great mystery to science. Some 2,000 years ago, Pliny the Elder began to compile inventories of flora and fauna. In the process, he found beings that until a short time before were considered to be mythological. Nowadays, this miniature ocean, regarded as one of the most biodiverse places in the world, still jealously hides its secrets. Although we know the basics of the more than 15,000 animal species that inhabit these waters, we know almost nothing about the natural behavior of even the common ones, since many of these become active at sundown. The phases of the moon do not seriously affect the tides in the Mediterranean, but they do affect the behavior of many animals. Under the cover of night, a vast number of species become active in order to establish links and find food, all functioning under one premise: to eat without being eaten. Many have developed extraordinary abilities and sensory organs in order to survive until the next dawn. Others use the cover of night to reproduce in the warm waters of Mare Nostrum. Well into the 21st century, we understand the workings of the solar system better than we do the natural behavior of the inhabitants of our oceans. A large number of marine species are strictly nocturnal and wait for semi-darkness before invading the sea to look for food. Others, of diurnal habits, try to spend the night hours resting, although they're always alert to predators. In open waters, many animals find refuge in a group. Dolphins and other cetaceans never really fall asleep completely. They need to breathe in air from the surface regularly, and at the same time, they need to be aware of possible predators, which is why they rest by alternating between both hemispheres of their brain. Moreover, their echolocation warns them of any imminent danger. On the coast, things are different. Here, diurnal fish and the young of many species find cover between rocks and algae. Just like marine mammals and some birds, they rest by disconnecting half their brain, while the other half is constantly alert to the presence of predators. They don't need eyelids to close their eyes, but what alerts them to any danger is a sensory organ known as the lateral line, which they use to detect the tiniest movement around them. This lateral line is made up of a series of perforations or pores aligned on both sides of the fish, from the back of the head to its tail. In some species, the pores are even distributed along the head. When a pressure wave hits the fish, it travels inside the pores to extremely sensitive small organs known as neuromasts, which allow it to anticipate a predator's attack or to move along reduced visibility areas. The Phisidae are completely nocturnal animals that use sensitive palps or whiskers with which they detect their prey in total darkness or even when they're in the sand. Upon nightfall, an infinite number of crustaceans leave the crevices of rocks to look for detritus and organic material to feed on. Many species of shrimps, crabs, and lobsters are at the same time a very important source of protein for many other species, against which they've developed various defense mechanisms. From resistant exoskeletons and perfect camouflages that make it seem like they disappear, to sophisticated systems that allow them to detect both food sources and possible predators. This small European locust lobster captures chemical and olfactory signals with the ultra-sensitive hairs located on the tips of its two small antenna-like legs. The majority of these arthropods also have a very particular view of the world, since they perceive a great variety of wavelengths from infrared to ultraviolet. Like spiny lobsters, many of them have adapted organs that branch out throughout their exoskeleton, with which they send the brain all of the information gathered by their nerve endings in their antennae, by their protuberances, and by hairs all over their body. Hundreds of pieces of data processed in milliseconds to provide a clear idea of the medium that surrounds them. Salinity, temperature, pressure, smell, taste, and high-spectrum vision guide them through the dark seabed in search of detritus. Its armor is perfectly adapted to its needs. Its longer antennae also serve to keep its distance when it moves along exposed areas. When it enters a hole in the rocks, It is practically invincible for its many natural predators. Various species of cephalopods patrol the Mediterranean nights to hunt and feed off many of these crustaceans. Their 8 legs make them prodigies of evolution. With them, they trap their victims, even under a rock. Each leg has its own nerve terminal or processor at the command of a central brain, making them all independent. Equipped with 3 hearts, the octopus is a skilled hunter that, due to its excellent vision, is able to ambush or launch attacks against prey. Using their elastic membrane as a kind of net, their prey have little chance of surviving. With their powerful suckers, they rip their prey apart and put the pieces into their parrot beak-shaped mouth, which grinds them up as it seeks out its next victim. Some crustaceans have developed surprising adaptations to protect themselves from predators. Hermit crabs shed their borrowed shell periodically as they grow. Trusting the efficiency of their portable shell, they meander along the Mediterranean seabed in search of carrion. They detect their food, or the proximity of some predator in the darkness of night, thanks to antennae that are sensitive to the tiniest movements and to any chemical or olfactory trace. The sensitivity of these organs, together with their amazing vision, endow them with an exceptional arsenal of prevention. What's more, their exoskeleton is also covered by millions of hairs that are extremely sensitive to touch, which help them interact in their dark environment. Many of them sport hairdos made with sponges, algae, and anemones that help them go unnoticed. This Gibbs sea spider can go even further and seems to sway at the mercy of the waves in order to escape the attention of possible predators such as conger eels, physidae, and sea bass. Cereanthids are solitary polyps of the Cnidaria family. Like all members of this group, which also include corals, jellyfish, and anemone, they unfurl their sticky and stinging tentacles in order to capture organic particles and plankton that the currents bring in. They have shorter tentacles around their mouth that draw food towards their digestive tract and maintain the receptacle clean. Some species can even form small colonies. Other solitary anemones, such as Alicia mirabilis, which in Latin means marvelous, possess a mobile foot with which they move about to place themselves in strategic areas of abundance. When they finish their activity, they retract, curling in to hide during the day. Well anchored in sandy or muddy substrate, the Cerantheus membranaceus raises its neck by using a vascular system made of valves and membranes. By increasing the water pressure in its interior, it is able to raise itself 40 centimeters from the ground to extend its tentacles. Thanks to a mucus it segregates, sedimentary particles, sand, and compact calcareous remains adhere to it, making its retractile trunk much more resistant. Within the same species, tentacles can have different tonalities, but all of them activate their stinging nematocytes, which paralyze and ensnare anything that runs into its trap upon contact. Some anemones know exactly which surfaces to colonize. This Caliactis parasitica grows only on the shells of gastropods, which are reused by hermit crabs, particularly of the Dardanus callidus species, with which it carries out an extremely important symbiotic activity, lending it protection in exchange for mobility. When the size of 2 or even 3 anemone becomes so excessive that they are also a burden to the hermit crab, the symbiosis can evolve into phoracy, endangering the balance of the relationship. Although the traction power of this crustacean and the low gravity of the sea can make these anemone grow surprisingly large before seriously affecting their carriers. In summer and spring nights, the full moon calls millions of beings to reproduce. Many others take advantage of the opportunity to obtain food easily, unleashing a feeding frenzy that leaves no doubt as to the brutal structure of the food chain. From the bottom, where grouper and scorpionfish that blend in perfectly with their environment loom, to the highest levels where great schools of sardines, herrings, and silversides anxiously await for the great banquet. In perfect synchrony with the phases of the moon, these variform beings that are part of the zooplankton spawn in total coordination to ensure that as many offspring as possible survive their predators. Many males quickly surround a female to stimulate her and induce her to release eggs, which will be fertilized externally. These will be dispersed by the soft currents of open waters, where they will develop into its various larval phases until, as adults, they approach the coast to reproduce. The third right arm of the male octopus is also a reproductive organ. The so-called hectocotylized arm is introduced under the mantle of the female to deposit spermatophores, sacs full of sperm that the female will dose for the fertilization of over 180,000 eggs. After the transfer, the male abandons the female, who then hangs the embryonic sacs from the roof of her cave. And buried alive, she will look after them until they hatch and disperse throughout the seabed as she dies from starvation. Over 50 species of cephalopods live in the Mediterranean. Although little is known of the behavior of most of them, because their nocturnal and abyssal habits make the study of their behavior and natural relations quite difficult. In walls always exposed to currents, there is an abundance of nutrients running towards and from the abyss, allowing the continuous exchange of energy. By way of their two pairs of nasal orifices, two tubes on the tip of their mouth and another shorter pair close to their eyes, Moray eels capture chemical and odorous substances in the water. Not only to search for food, but also to seek out the most receptive female. Notwithstanding its limited sight, and the fact that the neuromasts on the lateral line are present only on its head, it has an extremely well-developed sense of smell that makes it an effective tracker. Between July and September, they approach the coast in search of a mate. Of their hundreds of eggs, larvae that are transparent and laterally flat will be born. They will live as pelagic beings in open waters until they become juveniles, when they'll descend to the bottom of the continental shelves to start developing their benthic habits. This other nocturnal eel has a more extended lateral line that reaches the end of its tail. Throughout its head, the conger eel also has pores that are especially sensitive to electromagnetic pulses, with which it detects the electrostatic energy emanated by everything that moves around it. Helped by water's superconductivity, they feel a world of electric waves and low-voltage luminescence. Almost all cartilaginous beings have taken advantage of their capacity to capture magnetic impulses to find their food in total darkness, even when they're buried deep. Sharks and stingrays possess organs known as ampullae of Lorenzini, distributed along their entire head, forming a network of sensitive pores. They detect small variations in the electric fields that all living beings generate. But the marbled torpedo ray goes even further, as they're capable of producing electric discharges to shock and even paralyze their prey, or defend themselves against aggression. The intensity of the discharge varies with the size of the individual and with the time that has elapsed from its last use, since it has to recharge its electric generators. It also uses electromagnetic signals to communicate with its kin and to find them in the enormity of the night so that it can mate in the spring. They're ovoviviparous, and in September, this female will give birth to between 5 and 35 offspring, miniature replicas 7 to 10 centimeters long that are totally self-sufficient. Until then, they will patrol the sandy seabeds close to the coast, feeding off small fish mollusks and cephalopods buried in the sand. The eyesight of octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish are a marvel of evolution. In the most absolute darkness, they can see the faintest bioluminescence perfectly well, thanks to the sensitivity of their retina, which perceive various wavelengths simultaneously. Projecting both their elastic tentacles 3 times their length, they trap their victims in lightning attacks. Once bound by its other 8 shorter legs, it begins to chew it with its parrot-like beak, which is so characteristic of cephalopods. The bottoms of the Mare Nostrum are systematically combed by a tireless army of sea cucumbers, sea urchins, and starfish in search of food. With the exception of small ocellum found on the tips of the arms of some starfish, these spiny creatures lack any real vital organs. Like the rowers of a Roman galleon, hundreds of perfectly coordinated ambulacral feet do more than just move it. Sensitive epidermal cells are the primary receptors, but their feet also aid in breathing and in the reception of luminous, tactile, and chemical stimuli to help in the difficult task of perceiving its environment. Its mouth, made up of 5 mobile calcareous plaques, like jaws, as well as the modular formation of its dermis that allows it to move its feet with dexterity, render the aphiuroids rather active predators. As with other echinoderms, they possess a very archaic nervous system, made up of a main processing ring, which runs through the disc connecting a radial sensory system that transmits anything touched or felt by its feet. Many fish choose an intense shade of red to go unnoticed before their predators. This is because without artificial light, it reflects a wavelength similar to an undefined shadow that isn't easily perceived. And if they remain immobile, they have a greater chance of surviving another night. These detritus-rich seabeds, spread throughout the continental shelf, are surprisingly fertile places where highly specialized beings live. Although they seem deserted, upon the arrival of nightfall, they come to life in a rush of activity. Some benthic beings use these sediments to hide, hoping not to be seen by their prey or their predators. Almost completely buried, some don't miss an opportunity. And although they're diurnal animals, the voracity of their species makes them attack on reflex. We know very little about this small cousin of the conger eel. Although it's amply extended throughout the sedimentary coastal platforms of the Mediterranean, the Atlantic, and even the Northeast Indian Ocean and Red Sea, the behavior of the so-called Balearic conger eel is still a mystery to science. It is believed that they go through a pelagic phase, and that at a certain age, they go down to the bottom, spending the rest of their lives buried during the day in the great sandy plains of the continental shelf. After sunset, they move around in search of food. It seems that through their marked lateral line and the extreme sensibility of its crystalline skin, they might be able to feel vibrations that warn them of approaching intruders, even when buried in the sand. The spiny spider crab's body is completely covered by rigid, curved hairs to which algae and other elements from the seabed get tangled and thus allow it to blend in with their environment. What's more, this spiny armor deters its predators while it searches for food in unprotected environments. Recently, the acidification of the oceans has affected the Mediterranean in particular. Because it's a closed sea, man-made pollution is drastically varying the acidity of its waters, making it too high for the calcareous shells of crustaceans, which soften as a result of the chemical reaction or don't even reach the necessary consistency to protect them against its predators. Flying gurnards are also widely distributed throughout almost all the warm seas in the world. But like many other species of little commercial value, little is known of them apart from what can be observed when they're captured, generally by trawling. It seems that to market them would be rather unproductive, and they would be too costly to process because of their spiny protuberances. So their already dead bodies are thrown overboard by the thousands. These fantastic beings are basically diurnal. But with the spring full moon, thousands of adult individuals throughout the Mediterranean coast that are dispersed during the day come together, possibly to display their genetic prowess before spawning in absolute synchrony. Unfortunately, this and many other species are endangered due to the loss of their habitat, caused by excessive trawling and pollution. Because of this, we might never find out why flying gurnards come together under the Mediterranean moonlight. Through their rhinophores, Opistobranchia like this one perceive the odors that will lead them to the sponges and acidaceas on which they feed, or to the chemical traces of other kin. They have a small calcareous shell inside their mantle, where they also have gills and reproductive organs. Hermaphrodism is common in these slow-moving species. The sea hare also has an internal shell, a vestige of its evolutionary past. But its parapodium isn't joined at the top, which allows the animal to swim by moving its mantle like a pair of wings. Some Aplesias move with agility through large distances in search of better places to feed, or in the wake of some other sexually interesting individual. They are also hermaphrodites, although in order to constantly renew the species genetically, they crossbreed. Very rarely do they self-fertilize themselves. Reproduction is sexual. Both individuals are capable of providing, receiving, and storing sperm to fertilize the eggs that will lay well attached to any stable surface in the form of a spiral gelatinous bunch. From them, tiny larvae will hatch and survive by floating among plankton in open waters until they develop completely and return to the coastal bottoms to continue their biological cycle. It's estimated that the amount of plant life the oceans produce can be up to 10 times that on dry land, and that marine plants have produced over 85% of the planet's oxygen. The huge areas of phanerogams that extend throughout the Mediterranean shores, besides being primary producers, lend protection and provide food to many species that, together with their prolific interactions with other biotopes, make these Mediterranean tapeweed prairies among the most fruitful in the planet. Beyond the continental shelf, many pelagic beings also feel the call of the moon. From the onset of spring, thousands of bluefin tuna weighing up to 450 kilograms have entered en masse through the Strait of Gibraltar to converge with other groups in various key places in the Mediterranean, where they were born. Throughout their journey, they don't eat a thing. They only have room for their precious genetic cargo, which they will unload in a spectacular dance of fertilization in perfect synchrony with the full moon that hovers above the Mediterranean. Unfortunately, a decreasing number of specimens have been reaching their destination because of their increasing value in the international markets. Too many of them are captured before they're able to unload their legacy at the mercy of the currents. Many opportunists punctually attend the banquet, from Dinofera and jellyfish to long chains of small salps or solitary adults. They all feed on eggs, larvae, and an endless array of microorganisms that, like them, are dragged here by the soft but noteworthy currents of this closed sea. Once fertilization takes place, the tuna's eggs undergo cellular division, after a brief incubation period in the placid and warm waters of the Mediterranean. In the meantime, a large number of these eggs will become fodder for active zooplankton, jellyfish, and great filtering cetaceans. The spot chosen is not a coincidence. Somehow, bluefins are aware of the riches of these places. Although they seem infertile, they are in reality a rich garden of microscopic life, sheltering a large variety of phytoplankton and zooplankton formed by the larvae of thousands of species, some of other tuna, and many others of coastal or benthic origin. This guarantees a constant food source for the small tuna when they are born. Young bluefins develop very quickly. Recently hatched, they are active swimmers and highly voracious. In a few months, they will abandon the Mediterranean in herds and will not return until the ages of 3 or 4, when already weighing 30 kilograms, they feel the call of the moon for the first time. Exactly what the tuna does here in the Mediterranean was discovered a very short time ago. After so many centuries, this sea is still a true mystery. Mankind, which has fed off its hand, is now more concerned with prospecting the seabed than with trying to understand the natural behaviors of the species that inhabit it, which is the key to deciphering the secret to ocean regeneration. Instead of this, we are using this huge water surface as an enormous wasteland, polluting and plundering its highly valuable natural resources without allowing it to recuperate. The effects of non-selective fishing endanger hundreds of species that aren't even marketed. And uncontrolled depredation of individuals that have not yet reproduced is devastating. For such an interrelated macroorganism as the Mediterranean Sea, the disappearance of species that are apparently insignificant causes serious imbalances in its global function. We have to understand that each living organism has multiple specific biological functions, and that just because we don't see a species as interesting doesn't mean they're not important. The origins of life on our planet are found in the oceans, and it is precisely because of this that oceans might hold the solutions to innumerable enigmas, many of which continue to be hidden under the dark mantle of the Mare Nostrum after dark. This small ocean, with an incredible capacity to regenerate itself, only needs us to give it a break and to dedicate more individual and collective effort to understanding and protecting it, so that it can accompany mankind along its next evolutionary step, a more sustainable future.